I am 86 years old. For 52 years, I was a forensic investigator. I spent my life reading the truth off dead bodies, off broken glass, off blood spatter on a wall. People called me brilliant. They called me the man who never misses a detail. But I missed the only detail that mattered. I thought I had time. That's the lie every investigator tells himself. You spend your days staring at death, and somehow you convince yourself it will never come for the people you love. You think you're the exception. You think evidence is something that happens to other families. I was wrong. Let me take you back. I was 34 years old when I worked my first big case. A young girl, gone. Her family sat in my office, and I promised them I would find the truth, and I did. It took me 11 months, but I found it. I stood in that courtroom, and I watched justice happen because of the work I did. That night, I went home, and I felt like a god. I thought that feeling would last forever. For the next 4 decades, I chased that feeling in case after case. Murders, disappearances, cold cases nobody else wanted to touch. I became known across the country. Detectives called me before they called their own bosses. I built a name that outlived most careers. But here is what nobody tells you about a life spent chasing truth for strangers. You stop looking for truth at home. My son used to leave notes on my desk, small ones. Dad, can we talk? I would read them between case files and tell myself, later. I'll talk to him later. I had a body waiting for an autopsy. I had a family waiting for answers. His note could wait. Later never came. Not the way I imagined it would. I want you to sit with that for a second, because right now, today, you are doing the exact same thing I did. You are telling yourself later I'll call her, later I'll say sorry, later I'll sit down and really listen to my child, my parent, my oldest friend. You believe deep down that later is guaranteed. It is not. I spent my whole career studying the moment right before death, the last hour, the last choice, the last words. I know more about how people die than almost anyone alive. And here is the truth I learned too late. The evidence of a wasted life doesn't show up in a lab. It shows up in empty chairs at a dinner table. It shows up in silence where a voice used to be. It shows up when you're sitting alone at 86 years old, replaying conversations you never had. I built my whole identity finding the truth for other families. And I ignored the one truth sitting right in front of me. Something happened when I was 61. Something that cracked everything I believed about my own life open. I didn't see it coming. No one ever does. I'll tell you what it was. But first I need you to understand something. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait for a case file to teach you what love already tried to tell you for free. I thought I had time. I was wrong. And what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about truth, about justice, about the people I loved most. Let me take you back to when it started, not the crack, the years before it, when everything still looked fine on the surface. I was 39. My wife's name was Eleanor. We had one son, David. He was 7 years old, all elbows and questions, always asking me what I did at work. I would tell him small pieces, never the real details. A child shouldn't know what a real crime scene looks like. But I remember one night, he asked me something that stuck with me for years. Dad, do dead people know they're gone? I laughed it off. I told him no, of course not. I kissed his head and went back to my files spread across the kitchen table. Eleanor watched me from the doorway that night. She didn't say anything. She just watched. I didn't understand that look then. I understand it now. The work consumed me. Slowly. The way water wears down stone. Not all at once. A missed dinner here. A missed school play there. A promise to coach his baseball team that I broke because a body had been found in the river, and I was the only one they trusted to process the scene. Every time, I told myself the same thing. This case matters. This family needs me. I'll make it up to my own family later. I was good at building that story for myself. By the time David was 14, he stopped leaving notes on my desk. He stopped asking me questions about my day. He just existed in the house like a quiet roommate. Eleanor tried to bridge the gap. She would say things like, "He needs you, not your paycheck." I would nod. I would agree with her completely, and then I would go back to work the next morning anyway. There is a specific kind of pride that comes from being needed by strangers. Grieving families would call my office and beg for my help. Detectives would say my name like it meant something. I was solving puzzles that saved lives, that put dangerous men behind bars, that gave closure to people who had none. How could I walk away from that to sit through a school play? That was the lie. I framed it as sacrifice, like I was the one giving something up for the greater good. But the truth was simpler and uglier than that. The work was easier than my own home. Evidence doesn't argue with you. A crime scene doesn't ask you why you weren't there last week. A case file never looks at you with disappointment in its eyes. My son did. Every single day. By the time David turned 20, he moved out the day he graduated high school. Not to a dorm nearby, to another state entirely. He said he wanted a fresh start. I told Eleanor it was normal, that young men need independence. She looked at me and said something I never forgot. He's not running towards something, Robert. He's running away from us. Away from you. I didn't want to hear that. So I buried myself deeper into work. I told myself the cases I solved gave meaning to my life, that a strained relationship never could. I told myself David would come around eventually, that we had time to repair things once he settled down, once he matured, once life slowed down for both of us. I thought I had time. Eleanor grew quieter over the years. She stopped asking me to be home for dinner. She built her own life around mine, small and separate, like two people sharing a house instead of a marriage. I told myself we were fine, comfortable, stable. I didn't see the cracks because I never stopped to look. I was too busy studying other people's tragedies to notice the one growing inside my own walls. I was 61 years old when the phone rang at 4 a.m. I knew that kind of call. I had made hundreds of them myself over the years. Nobody calls at 4 a.m. with good news. My hands knew before my mind did. They started shaking before I even picked up the receiver. It was Eleanor's sister. Eleanor had collapsed in the kitchen. A stroke. By the time I got to the hospital, she was in a coma. I stood in that hallway, the same kind of hallway I had walked through 1,000 times to deliver news to other families. Except now I was the one waiting. I was the one who needed someone else to tell me the truth. For 3 days, I sat beside her bed. I held her hand. I talked to her, even though the doctors said she couldn't hear me. I told her about our wedding day. I told her about the house we bought when David was born. I told her all the things I never said out loud when she could actually respond. I was wrong about so much. I had spent 30 years believing there would be time later, time to slow down, time to sit with her at dinner without a case file open beside my plate, time to really see her, not just live beside her. Eleanor never woke up. I called David. It took me 2 tries to get the words out. When he arrived at the hospital, I saw a grown man standing in the doorway, someone I barely recognized, not because he had changed so much, because I had never really looked at him closely enough to know who he'd become. He didn't come stand near me. He went straight to his mother's bedside. He held her other hand, and for the first time in 20 years, I watched my son cry. I wanted to reach for him. I didn't know how anymore. After the funeral, David stayed for 4 days. We barely spoke, not because we were angry, because we didn't know how to be father and son without Eleanor there to translate between us. She had spent our whole lives quietly filling the space I left empty. Without her, there was nothing but silence. On the last night before he flew back, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where I used to spread my case files while he tried to talk to me as a boy. He said, "Dad, do you know how many times I needed you and you weren't there?" I didn't have an answer. 52 years of finding answers for other people. And I had nothing to give my own son. He said, "I used to think you loved your work more than us." I told him that wasn't true, that I loved them more than anything, that the work was how I provided for our family, how I gave us a good life. He looked at me and said something that broke something open inside me. A good life isn't the same as a good father. He left the next morning. We spoke on the phone maybe 4 times a year after that. Polite, distant, like 2 people who used to know each other a long time ago, I went back to work because it was the only language I knew how to speak. But something had shifted. I started noticing things I had never let myself see before. The way grieving families held each other in ways my own family never did. The way a mother would clutch her child's photograph and say she would give anything for one more ordinary Tuesday with them. I had 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays with my son. I spent almost all of them somewhere else. That was the first layer of truth. The one I had spent my whole life avoiding by staying busy, staying needed, staying important to strangers instead of present for the people who actually loved me. But the deepest truth was still coming, and it would take one more loss to teach it to me completely. David died at 51, a car accident, 3 years ago. I was 83. I got the call from a police officer, the same kind of call I used to make myself. He used careful, practiced words, the words I had used on strangers 1,000 times. I finally understood how those words land when they're aimed at you. I flew to see him one last time, not to solve anything, not to investigate anything, just to say goodbye to a man I never really got to know. Standing over him, I finally understood what I had spent 52 years refusing to see. I always believed success meant being needed, being important, having a name that mattered to strangers, to detectives, to grieving families who thought I was the answer to their prayers. I believed that if I built enough of that, it would somehow make up for what I wasn't building at home. I was wrong. Being needed by the world is not the same as being present for the people who love you. I thought the two could exist side by side, that I could give my best hours to strangers and still have something left over for my own family. I was wrong about that too. Love isn't leftover time. It isn't the scraps of attention you hand out after everything else is done. Love needs your first hours, not your last ones. Here is what 52 years as a forensic investigator taught me, and it took losing everyone to finally understand it. I know how to read a crime scene. I know how to find the exact second something went wrong. I know how to trace a death back to its true cause. But I never once turned that same skill on my own life until it was too late. If I had, I would have seen it clearly. The cause of my family's slow death wasn't one big moment. It wasn't one bad decision. It was 1,000 small choices every single day to pick the case file over the conversation, to pick being important over being present, to pick later over now. Later never came. Not because life is cruel, because later was never real to begin with. Later is a story we tell ourselves, so we don't have to feel guilty about choosing something else today. I thought I had time. I was wrong. Don't make my mistake. You are doing it right now, somewhere in your life. Maybe it's a parent you haven't called this month. Maybe it's a child who stopped leaving notes on your desk because you never answered them. Maybe it's a marriage running quietly in the background while you chase something that feels more urgent. None of it is more urgent than that. I spent my whole career finding the truth for other people. Truth about who committed a crime. Truth about how someone died. Truth about what really happened in the last moments of a stranger's life. And the whole time, the most important truth was sitting across from me at my own kitchen table. A good life isn't the same as a good father. A good career isn't the same as a good life. A busy life isn't the same as a full one. I know that now. I know it with the same certainty I once used to close a case, to stand in a courtroom and say, this is what happened, this is the truth. But knowing it now doesn't give me back the Tuesdays. I am 86 years old now. I live alone in a house that used to be full. I still have David's old room the way he left it before he moved out at 18. I never changed it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me was still waiting for him to come back and finally have the conversation we never had. That conversation will never happen now. I am telling you this not for sympathy. I don't need it. I am telling you this because I am running out of time, and you are not yet. That's the only difference between us right now. You still have your Tuesdays. So listen to me carefully, because I spent 52 years learning how to read the truth off dead things. And this is the one truth I can still hand to someone living. Stop waiting for later. Call the person you've been meaning to call. Not next week. Today. Sit at the table with your child and put the phone down. Look at your parent while they're still telling their stories, not after they're gone and you're piecing them together from memory. Say the words now. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm proud of you. Say them while someone is still standing there to hear them. You will not regret the time you gave to the people you love. You will only regret the time you didn't. I built a name for myself finding justice for strangers. And I would trade every case, every conviction, every headline with my name in it, for one more ordinary dinner with my son, one more night where he leaves a note on my desk, and I actually stop what I'm doing and read it right then. That's what your life is made of. Not the big cases, not the promotions, not the achievements that look impressive from the outside. It's made of ordinary Tuesdays. Don't let them slip by while you tell yourself you'll make it up later. I thought I had time. I was wrong. Later never came. Don't make my mistake.